defaults to 0 edit step and a few other things like that. And also my bootable version, which I'm running now, has add 22K or whatever, one of those little apps that frees up a bit of RAM by removing one of the bit planes from memory. So you can see it started up in 2-color mode there. It saves a bit of RAM, quite a bit of RAM actually, which is quite handy if you're on an Amiga 500 or 500 plus. Not so critical on this, but anything you can save on a bootable, then yeah. Because strictly speaking, this version of Protracker is intended for A1200s. That's not to say it doesn't work on the others, but it used to be you would never see any Amiga struggling with Protracker because all the noise tracker, sound tracker, Protracker versions that were around in the late 80s, early 90s were basically for the 500 because that's what everybody had in Europe and Britain. So will this be on the VOD? I guess. I'm not really sure how that works. I usually, if I remember to, and if I've got enough disk space to record it all, I usually record the streams and put them on YouTube. I didn't do the last one. I think I needed the space before I had a chance to upload it. It's getting pretty tight over here with work stuff filling up my drives. Unreal Engine. Especially when you're compiling locally. It just munches every available byte. But yeah, I'll catch you later, and I'll try and get it uploaded. Yeah. So by the time this version of Protracker 2.3D and its successors came along, it was really being pointed at A1200. So stuff like the scopes and a few other things will struggle a bit on the A500s and the slower CPU, but it will be. It never affects audio. Never, like you never get any slowdown glitches or anything like that, because that's all absolutely locked to chipset timing. So don't worry about that. But I think 8-Bit Bubsy was a bit reluctant to go too far catering for A500 because that was never the intention of the original source that he overhauled, which makes sense. But yeah, got it to the point where it works quite happily. Also, some of those memory bugs, like you wouldn't have noticed on a 1200 because there would be enough memory. So with 2 megs of chip and 8 plus megs of fast, for example, you might never come across some of those weird memory bugs because there was no real contention. But in a 500 with a trapdoor expansion, so in a regular 500 with a trapdoor expansion, you've got 512 of chip soldered onto the board, and you've got another 512 on the trapdoor. But that doesn't become chip the way it does in an A600 or an A500 Plus. On an original A500, that memory becomes, some people call it Ranger memory, some people call it slow mem. That's because it has all the sort of disadvantages. There aren't many disadvantages to chip memory, but one of them is like, it's complicated. But yeah, they have all the disadvantages of chip memory with none of the advantages of fast memory. So fast mem is memory that doesn't have to queue up to use the CPU, doesn't have to queue up behind the chipset memory, which chipmem does, but chipmem is mega fast for doing operations on those chips, like reading and writing audio to and from the output and that sort of thing. So, and DMA access and stuff like that. So, where's I going with that? So yeah, last stream was working in a very tight space on a 500, which is almost no elbow room if you've only got 512 chip and 512 slow. So anything audio related can't use slow mem. And Protracker will usually try and put anything into slow mem or fast mem that it can. So graphics, data, anything like that, and we'll try and free up as much chip mem as it can for audio. But 500 plus with whatever expansion I've got in it, I can't remember. it's it's 1 meg on board. It's 1 chip meg on board, and then 1 in the trapdoor. So that must be a 2 meg. Is it? Did I take the trapdoor out last night? I can't remember. Oh well. Yeah. Anyway, it's pretty. None of that matters tonight because we're doing chip tune where you don't need much memory. I think the tune I'm working on at the minute is maybe 18 kilobytes, something like that. And it's only going to get smaller if I optimize it. It's probably not going to get bigger. We'll see. So this one has a real floppy drive in for some reason. Doesn't have a Gotek in. The Gotek is up here on an external enclosure, and so that means I'm doing a bit of disk swapping here, which isn't usually ideal, but I don't mind. To be honest, I do most of my tracking on the 1200, which is all hard disk and compact flash. It's very easy to swap things back and forth, and that's what most of the streams you'll have seen, if you've seen any of the streams. Jan 21, no, it's not right. So before I started the stream, I fired up WinUAE, created a new ADF file, a new disk image, and I called it mods March 21. Mods March 21, it says on the tiny OLED screen that you can't see. Oh, there it is. And that's the name of this tune. Shit unfinished. 17K. So yeah, I created a new disk image for this month until I run out of space on it, but for now it's fine. In UAE, and also in UAE I've got a hard disk directory, or directory hard link, so you can use a directory on the computer as a hard disk in WinUAE. Drag and drop the file over to the mounted image, which sat on that USB drive, which I've just plugged into the disk enclosure. It sounds fiddly. It is a bit fiddly, but it's the least fiddly there is, unless you've got PCMCIA on a 600 or a 1200, in which case you just throw one of these things in and out of a reader and then into the side of the Amiga, and that's very quick. This is quick enough, and the point was just to get it onto a Gotek, so we can load it. An ACA 500 plus, yeah. I don't want any acceleration for my Amiga 500s, and I definitely don't want to pay for acceleration that I'm not using, and I also don't want potential incompatibilities that come with that if you're running a lot of demo scene prods, which I am, a lot of which were written before there was anything other than a 500 and a trapdoor, maybe a GVP or whatever. So they're really cool, and that whole family of CPU accelerators is very interesting. I think it's great for somebody who has a 500 and wants to make the most of it. Whereas because I've been doing this a long time, we've all been doing it a long time. I mean, because I have acquired quite a lot of Amigas over the years, mostly as backups for live shows and for different purposes. So I've got two 600s, and one of them is my original Amiga, but one of them, actually I've got three. One of them's Frankenstein donor, and that's because they're great for hand luggage. So I used to tour with them if I couldn't take much luggage. If I didn't have the car, if I had to take a plane to a gig, I would stick that in hand luggage, like a laptop, and it would get security. It would get swabbed for explosives at every airport I took it through, but it was okay. So if you've got a 500 or 1000 or whatever, and you really want to accelerate that because that's the Amiga you have, then yeah, it's great. But yeah, all I want in a 500 is a hard drive. And there is one available. There's one that's been designed, but nobody's manufacturing them at the minute, which works on the I can't remember the name, the octopus thing, where it's kind of like, it's how the GVP sidecar used to work. So it's not IDE, and you don't need 2.4 kickstart to run it. And that's cool, because I want to keep my A500, this one, as stock as possible with 1.3 kickstart, because I want to run a lot of classic demos on it, and sometimes I want to run very old trackers on it. So I want that to be compatible. Let me see. I don't use acceleration, 90% for the action replay that's built in, and 10% for kick 3.1 and that expanded memory stuff. Cool. In the end, though, I'll just use it as a freezer. Oh, that's interesting. So I haven't used it a great deal, but I've got one of these, and yeah, they're great fun. I'll think of something interesting to do with that one of these days on the stream. So yeah, I mean, in the sense that an ACA 500 and similar things are like Swiss Army knives for just doing everything on an Amiga that was never supposed to do most of that stuff. That in itself is very cool. But because a lot of those things I just do as like my everyday stuff on a 1200, anything I need acceleration for on the 1200. So the 1200's got a 1260 and 030, and anything I need acceleration for, it's just kind of everyday productivity. It's like unpacking big LHAs or stuff like that. I don't really. It's handy. It keeps things fast. I wouldn't want to be without it. But like, I've had faster accelerators that I've sold because like I'd rather somebody else got the joy of them if I'm not really making the most of them. But this stuff goes around and comes around. I'm sure some people have had the same accelerator twice over the last 25 years. Cool. It's 8 o'clock. I haven't played a note yet. That's grim. There we go. So, pretty quick to load in real time on floppy emulator because it's only 18K. Let's take a look at samples first. Wow, that's a square wave. That's a slightly different square wave. Hope the audio's coming through all right. I've got a side chain on the vocals. Hopefully makes me audible, but I really shouldn't be talking too much. I should just be doing. So this, I suspect, is a square wave that I probably made with a text editor and then adjusted a bit and a bit more and a bit more to give myself a bit of a pulse width variety. So if you change your instrument you use very fast on a series of notes, or even on one note, then you get a PWM effect like you would get on a synth. That's a pretty characteristic sound for chiptunes and for the SID tunes that they were based on, and for a whole lot of other things like the Atari chips and all that kind of stuff. I'm just gonna yeah, so and then these are an octave down, so at the expense of a few more sample slots and a tiny amount of space, you get another octave or another 2 octaves range. Does that make another 2 in total? So the range 1, 2, 3 octaves. I can't count. I'm terrible at counting octaves. That is literally part of my day job. I've been doing it all week and getting confused. Couple of drums. They're quite extravagant drums, actually. They're reasonably high quality, all things considered. I mean, that's 2.5 kilobytes. It's not very high quality. But yeah, it's okay. That's nice. Oh yeah, I remember what I used that for. That is just noise, 800 bytes of noise. Not a great amount of samples if you want to loop it and have it sound any good. But if all you want to do is sweep it, is pitch sweep it, then you can get away with it, I think. So let's hear it so far. Is that, and it's looped at least once, maybe twice now. So yeah, I mean, it's looping. Could be done. I mean, like, no rules in this game, no rules. But while I'm blathering on shite, I'm gonna see if I can fix this camera shutter with some blue tack. Lots of old man noises when I do it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it could be done. That could be it. Feels a bit imbalanced because that sort of transposing section at the end kind of loops on itself, doesn't really go anywhere, flicks back to the start again. If I was going to leave it as it was, I would tweak some of the notes at the very end of that phrase to lead back into the beginning a bit more nicely. That's not going to work. Or maybe it will. Maybe it will. So yeah, I mean, it's what, a minute and a bit? That's a respectable length of time for a chiptune on a music disc. You don't want to really eat people's time equally. On the other hand, most music discs work on a looping basis where you have to manually change the tune. That's been the way forever. And I don't know the details. Andy said that it's hope it's not top secret. I don't think it is. Well, the concept of a music disc is not top secret. So let's not try it. It's Rebels, of course. Rebels finally doing chip music disc 2 if you fancy doing a track. Don't think there's an official size limit, but probably 130 kilobytes. Well, no danger of that. So yeah, cool. Doesn't really matter who it's for. If it's meant to be a chip disc, then it makes sense to give them a chip tune rather than a bigger sample heavy tune. Could do a combination of the two, but I think this is fine. So it leans quite heavily on this pulsing ARP thing. Not that, but we'll get to it. That might be the only reason I've got so many octaves of the same square waves, to be honest, so I could get a big swoop like that. Oh well. What's going on in channel 1? Oh yeah, just this this pulsing bass. So I did say I was going to do a quiet one where I just track and don't talk, but like, hey, there are always people who are new to this, and I'm a tracker bore, so I'm always happy to explain what's going on. And yeah, this is what I was describing before, where you've got a series of samples. In this case, samples 10, 11, 12. Let's find them. 10, 11, 12, 13. So taking the edge off, this is me trying to remember what I was thinking 10 years ago. A lot of what I was thinking 10 years ago was exactly the same as I'm thinking now, and 10 years before that. But yeah, what I had in mind 10 years ago was probably to take a bit of the edge, the hard edge, off the square waves for the bass. This is a bit softer. It's more like a very fluffy sawtooth, to be honest. Still got that. It's still squarey enough that it benefits from having the pulse width changed, but it's just kind of softened off a bit and has some extra noise thrown in there to give it a bit of bite. I wonder if I drew those in Milky Tracker, actually. That's a possibility. Because Milky Tracker is great for doing a lot of quick variations on a waveform, on a chip wave. You could just run through it, and I think it's either Alt or Shift, mouse click, and you can do it Fast Tracker as well, but back then I was using Milky Tracker if I was doing any tracking on the PC, because it was a pain to get Fast Tracker up and running. Now, of course, because 8-Bit Bubsy did a clone of that as well, a fantastic clone of that, which I have open for some reason. It's got this tune in it because I was going through tunes on old hard disks. Yeah, so I'm keeping pretty closely 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14 is as intense as it gets. And then you cycle through those quickly at the speed your song's playing back. It sounds like a pretty steppy, slightly sample and holdy kind of pulse width mod, which is what I like. And if you wanted to get that smoother and more SID-like, then you have a number of options, like double the number of waveforms you use, and which increases the resolution, and you can make adjustments to those pulse widths on each one. And then if you're going to do that, you should also run it at double the speed. And there's a lot you can do to make it smoother. I don't want it too smooth. That sounds pretty good. Insofar as anything is very me, this is very me. This is... I love doing that, and if I sit down at a tracker, that kind of thing is the first thing I do. I just bash through doing pattern delay on a simple waveform. So I've talked about this a lot, but pattern delay is, well, we've got no effects here, we've got no DSP, we've got no reverb, delay, distortion, anything like that. All we can change about the sound that comes out of the Amiga is the moment in time that it comes out of the Amiga and the pitch it's at when it comes out of the Amiga. And in a sense, that's just all you can change about any sound. But in DSP, in modern DAWs and VSTs and plugins and stuff, you are doing a lot of intensive processing. Every one of, let's say, 44,000 frames in a second, or samples in a second, often in stereo, and you're doing a lot of pretty serious maths on that stuff, which is great because you can get amazing effects. We haven't got that on here, 7 megahertz or whatever, and no hardware support for any audio processing beyond just reading samples from memory and spitting them out of the phono jacks. That's kind of it. Which means that if you want to do delay, you have to think, well, what is delay? Delay is the sound you just heard, slightly quieter. Hearing it again, later in time, slightly quieter. So that's what we do. And one way to do it is to have your sound in one channel, and then to repeat all of those sounds in another channel, but bump them down a bit so they're happening slightly later in time. But hey, channels are premium here. We've only got 4. So if you want to save channels, you can fit the subsequent repeats of that delayed signal into the gaps between the original notes. And that's what pattern delay is. So the melody here, or the arpeggio, or ostinato, or whatever, here is... In other words, it's every one of these notes that doesn't have a C command next to it, because the C command is a volume command, and C means 10. So the delayed signal starts here, 1, 2, 3 rows down. Yeah, so if you put those together, if you recorded them separately and mix them together in Ableton, then they would sound like a delay, especially if you panned one over, and it's basically what a delay is doing. And even when you program a delay in DSP, what you're really doing is buffering a sound and saying, okay, well, a certain number of milliseconds later, I'm going to repeat the input signal. And then you can do other things like feedback and stuff. We can't do that, but if we kind of merge these in to the same space, so that trick's got to be at least 40 years old now, and you'll hear it used in Family Tracker and on actual sound chips as well. Similar principles, similar restrictions. Remember, the point of this type of chip tune is to mimic the sound chips that were used for actual chip tunes, which weren't then being called chip tunes. They were just video game music. They were just or computer music on a synth chip. It's the fact that the Amiga was one of the first affordable, widely available machines that had very good sample capabilities, that meant that you could use tricks to emulate something that you're already fond of. So any effect you see on this column here, I don't know how weird this is. So I'm pointing at the screen, and you can't really see the screen that easily, but you can see hopefully what I'm pointing at and match it to the HDMI output. I'm hoping that is making some kind of sense. Yeah, so any effect you see on here is either doing something to the time or something to the volume. That's about it. There are tons of effects that do lots of weird stuff, cool stuff. This one is a Tremolo Vibrato kind of effect. So 482 is quite heavy. So it's quite deep in terms of how much the pitch fluctuates, but it's quite a slow cycle rate. So it sounds like more like an ornamental piece of violin vibrato, maybe, rather than something kind of like full-on Doctor Who. And that effect has a memory, which means every time we use 400 in the rest of the pattern, that's not strictly necessary because, like I said, the effect has a memory, so it will apply 8 and 2 to every subsequent instance of that. That can be really handy, big time saver. And then that's just drums, I think. They seem a bit quiet to me, but it could be my imagination or yeah. Yeah, so that is at some point I've mixed a kick with that hat. So I don't want to start boosting that hat. If I boost the hat, it would be louder than the volume at which it's been mixed into this kick. You can just about hear the snap of the hat in there. I won't go over that because that gets me back into Sample Town, and I'll be talking about that all night. And I've done enough streams about sampling and mixing and using the various editor features in Protracker to do that kind of thing. But that goes to show that it's not just a trick for mixing your jungle bangers. It's also pretty good for squishing all of your drums into one pattern in a tiny chippy like this. So the consequence of mixing that hat in with a kick means that that hat sounds like it's sounding every row. It would sound a bit weird if it never sounded at the same time as the kick. It does mean that now you always have to have the kick with the hat. If you wanted to be able to use the kick without the hat, you'd have to spend another sample slot. You've only got 31 and use a bit more memory. That might be fine. That's your judgment and compromise. So it finally starts. Bassline gets a bit more interesting. So what's keeping that bouncy is this command here, A07. That's a pretty broad strokes volume drop. A with a positive number in the first parameter would be a volume increase. A with a 0 in the first and a positive, well, they're all positive numbers. A with a number in the second parameter that's how much the volume drop is. So there's a fine volume tune, a fine volume change, but we don't want that. We'd have to use loads of rows, and we're not looking for elegant results here. We just want it to kind of quickly pulse. So when you do a preview, hitting enter to preview through the notes, through the lines one by one, you get none of the effects get passed, which is a bit of a pain, but it's kind of understandable because these effects are completely reliant on the speed. And if the playback isn't, if it's not playing back, then there's no speed, so a lot of these effects just can't work and don't make sense. So they're not passed during preview. Can be handy for remembering what you've composed just a few lines ago without having to play the whole pattern again. But it's pretty much just for hearing the sample at the pitch that you put in, or at the offset. That's another good instance of it. But none of these samples are big enough for me to use offsets today, so I'll talk about that another time. But you can preview an offset on a big sample using the 9 command. So at speed, it sounds pretty bouncy. If they were bigger, you get even more of a pronounced bounce. Might be hard to tell, but they're going effectively to 0. That's much easier to tell. And then something much lighter would be more difficult to... You might as well not be using anything there because the volume drop is so modest and the speed of the track is so high that it doesn't have time to drop down that far. It's still dropping a bit. Anyway, 7's what I set it at because I think that felt, or I thought that felt bouncy at this the speed. The speed, by the way, is have I not got a speed command on there? Well, 125 BPM. Doesn't look like a speed command. It's not like me. Oh well. I should probably do that, otherwise, if this ever gets played on chip to score PT1210, then it'll go wrong. Anyway. Yeah, so that's the next thing. Yeah, there's my noise sweep. Can't tell how crap it sounds when it's in the full mix. It sounds almost like real noise from a synth chip, but actually, it's what the hell? Have I flip me? Have I boosted that sample? I'm gonna load it again. Hey, it happens every week or every time. You forget that Protracker has a lot of keyboard shortcuts that do things you would never, ever, ever want to do, especially not on a keyboard shortcut, like boost your sample when you're not looking at it or doing anything sample related. Like, I only want to do that deliberately with a mouse by clicking boost. I don't want to do it just because I accidentally hit Alt B instead of Alt V. That's another change I could make to my custom version of Protracker, but I really don't want to be like going that deep into disabling bits of it, because that's not much fun for other people. So I'll load it again from scratch. Good job I didn't make any changes. All right. So I just wanted to solo this bit, this channel. It's a good example of sometimes when you're doing a chip tune, you have a channel that is basically like a utility track. So it is serving a purpose. It's got the noise sweep. And then it's got these pulses, these arpeggio pulses. So they're doing a couple of things all at once. They're doing a sort of pulse width sweep. They're doing a volume pulse, a volume sort of envelope of their own. And they're doing arpeggios, which are ended here with 0, and then 2 semitone values in hex. But all the gaps, all the spare unused space doesn't go to waste because I've got bits of delay from other channels. I mean, it sounds completely crackers like that, but you can hear those bits and pieces of of delay, of delayed melody. It's probably unnecessary, but sometimes that gives you the chance to let the melody ring out with a nice vibrato note. And you don't have to interrupt it for the pattern delay, because you can squish the pattern delay in another channel. So you wouldn't normally do that, because it still sounds a bit kind of scrappy, and you wouldn't normally do that unless you had the other channels filling in, papering over the gaps. The drums on channel 4 and the bass on channel 1. And a lot about writing a chip tune and Protractor is really, I mean, a lot of it is just kind of instinctively using a repertoire of tricks to make the kind of music you've been listening to since you were little. But if you start thinking about it, you realize actually, oh yeah, what I'm doing is kind of finding a tonal balance where some of those tricks can be made to seem more smooth and elegant than they really are. So, excuse me, if for some compositional or structural reason I didn't have the bass and the drums playing at this point, I wouldn't do it like that. I would make sure that the delay line for that melody had its own channel to itself, which wouldn't be full of drum or bass, and that would sound a lot smoother. And what you're usually going for when you do these tricks in a tracker is to make the ear believe that it's hearing something that it's not. So if you suggest that delay is going on, then the ear will often hear, like, the brain will often imagine like a whole reverb stage, a whole spectrum of distance and depth, field and sound and all that kind of stuff that isn't there. And it's one of the reasons that I think we used to, our imaginations used to kind of internalize and expand video game worlds, especially when we were younger and played on more limited systems. Sure, a lot of it is from the kind of impressionistic use of low bit artwork and those limits. It's all about limits. And then and I think that the best composers used and for me, watching demos as well when I was young, and even just crack tros and intros and stuff, the tricks that you can play on the ear, and because you have a willing participant in your audience, you have a captive audience who wants to imagine these worlds and wants to believe that what is objectively a crappy flight sim is actually a fully functional world, or what is objectively a 2D RPG with lots of very wonky perspective is actually a world that you can inhabit and enjoy. Well, none of that stuff matters. The actual fact of the perspective, or the actual fact of the color palette, or the actual fact of the limited number of audio channels, none of that matters, because enough creative tricks have been played on the eye, the brain, the ear, to make you meet them halfway. You meet the creators halfway, and you flesh that out in your imagination. Or you don't, in which case you don't play the game, or you don't remember the game and you don't think about it for the rest of your life, and that's fine if that's not for you. But yeah, that's why those tricks work, and that's why they're worth using. And there are modern equivalents to those tricks, and I still use them now as a game dev on modern platforms. A lot of them have become part of the repertoire of the kind of emotional and technical repertoire of composing and sound design and implementation. So here, yeah, it's not how you would do it in a simple melody and arp line, but it is how you do it with everything else going on, to get that extra sort of sugary delay sense going on. So, looks like I haven't asked myself to do it properly in this one. So it's actually like, I guess that's why I call it unfinished, because there's a lot of stuff going on in here that I have not finished. So I would flesh out that technique to this pattern and use it for some more delay. So the elbow room that gives me for channel 3 is, like I said before, it means that I can have a... If I wanted to squish pattern delay into this, then I would have to do something gnarly like lose the effect of that sustained note and the nice vibrato by repeating this bit. What is it? What sample is it? Doesn't sound like much, or it doesn't sound like much of a loss, because what I've gained is a sense of a delayed note. Oh. Pitch slide is another effect that isn't passed when you preview. But I got that delay note at the expense of a nice sustained vibrato note, and I don't want to do that. Because there's enough going on in the texture of the rest of the pattern that I can do without that, and the ear, the listener, won't think, oh, the delay just stopped, because the brain remembers that it was hearing that kind of effect 2 seconds ago, 1 second ago, in the previous pattern, and then it will hear that kind of effect again. And what I would often do, this would normally be right at the end of composing a tune. So throughout, I would have an idea of how many rows deep my pattern delay was. By that I mean how many rows after the source, the original sound, does the quieter delayed sound happen. In this case, it's 1, 2, 3 rows down. If you have it longer, it can be a bit too flappy. Fine for some tunes, not for this one. If you have it too short, it can sound like a sort of a surfy slapback delay. And I'm not doing the Beach Boys thing tonight. So when you know that, then you can go to the previous pattern to the one that you're working on. So this is the pattern I'm working on. It's in position 4. So I could fill those 3 rows here with the last 3 rows of the previous channel, which I'll do now by doing a Control B, marking 3 blocks, marking a block of 3 rows, Control C, moving to position 4, and quickly starting and stopping it to update the pattern position. You have to do that in Protracker. And then currently it's got a C00, which is like a volume stop. That's like whatever's going on, you stop the noise by doing a C++. C00, that just means volume 0 and nothing else plays. I've done that there. It's often good to do that at the start of a channel when you're in the middle of composing a tune. Otherwise you get stuck notes from other channels before you've settled on the structure that you're going to use. So I'm going to if I paste those there, you almost won't hear it. That was not a good example of that at all. What I should have done, of course, was to take the last 3 lines of this one. So what I need is that note. And from the melody channel 3, and I need to put it into 2 at the start of the next pattern. And not only that, but it needs to have a little pitch drop as well. I can't put the vibrato on there because I need this to be a lower volume. So that's what it sounds like. A bit crap by itself. It's never meant to be heard by itself. So let's listen to both of them. So you got that in your ear, picked up, whether or not consciously, the delayed note an octave down, slightly more than an octave down, because this is actually a C. It's just using the pitch command to speed. Oh, fuck, this bloody camera's going again. There it is. Thanks, Comatron. Could you give your mic a little push? It's possible. Cool. Yeah, I'll just increase the sidechain a bit. How's that? Is that better? That should cut the tune out for me to be heard, I think. But I'll try not to speak up with the tune too much. Yeah, so that's all kind of working as it should, and then again, the gaps in that are hidden by the whole tune. So once you're listening out for it, you really spot where the work hasn't been done. In other words, in the rest of this pattern, the work hasn't been done. Normally, this is like the last thing I would do. I will often do a little bit of fine-tuning and a little bit of polishing kind of early on or midway through as a reminder to myself to fix it up at the end. Because when I listen through, I will hear that, oh, shit, it sounds like somebody slacked off and didn't do all the bits I was supposed to do. Oh, yeah, that was me. And then I go back and do it. Like I said before, this is kind of done, but yeah, I think that needs to do something else before it loops back. Feels a bit imbalanced, and also where that loops back. I want those two notes there, because I think that'll, if this pattern does become the last one before the loop point, I think this will bind them together a bit better. Let's try it. Oh shit. Yeah, that's better. It's a little thing, but I think when you're basically trying to dig yourself out of a key change, That's a very uncharitable way of putting it. When you're composing your way out of an evolution or whatever, then yeah, you need to kind of smooth that transition as much as possible. If you want it to sound a bit less jarring. So that does the trick, I think. It makes that section of melody feel like it's got something to do with the initial one, which it doesn't necessarily, but this is how composers lie to you. Make it seem like they knew what they were doing all along. Yeah, so I think I need to holy shit. I haven't seen that happen before. That flashing, that cursor flashing blue and grey. That's wild. Is that like some weird sprite RAM thing? So Blue's recording mode, which I never use really. Oh, sorry, I don't use live recording. I just use kind of step input like that. That's weird. I hope that's not a sign that I've got more memory problems. Anyway, I'll put those in again. That's better. I don't know. It sounds a bit defeatist, like it's given up. I think that leads a bit too early into the next key. What was it before? Maybe it was just that. I think that keeps. I think I'll keep that as it was. I think that keeps the feel of the key it's in at the end of that pattern before the sort of transition point. Comatron says I never used return in PT2. No, that's fair enough. It's very handy when you need to go back and figure out a pattern delay, especially because typically, I won't do it now, I've done it enough times on the stream, but typically, if your mind's on it, you can go through and do a melody line or an arpeggio or an ostinato across the whole pattern pretty quickly, and then either keep that in your head and go back and do it on the delay points, 3 rows offset or whatever merged, or you can kind of, I can usually do it like continuously in one go if it's not too complicated, but that'll break down eventually, and I have to, let me find a new one. Yeah, so not an example of much artistic significance, but does the job. And then, okay, that's only a quarter of a pattern. By the time you get to half a pattern and beyond, then you really need to rely on that. Just listen, what the hell was that? Sometimes if you're in a key you're less familiar with, or if you just have some kind of cognitive dissonance with the note that you're looking at and the semitone you expect to hear, or it's just late at night and that's just your mind, then yeah, return's really handy. But as I say, it doesn't do any kind of effects parsing whatsoever, so not great for that. So if you use a lot of pitch slide commands, 3 especially, or if you want to fine tune your vibratos, then it's best just to find a new blank pattern and run all your tests at the start until you get the values that you like. So rather than doing this in the middle of an active pattern, then just use a blank one to find out what's going to work for you. It's pretty wild. Is the first one speed and the next one's... Yeah, the first one's speed. I got it wrong earlier when I explained what was going on. So yeah, F8.2 is quite a fast but low intensity cycle is what I meant to say, rather than the other way around. So that doesn't feel good. 4A4 is usually a good one for chippies. Depends how ridiculous you want to get. If you want to, a lot of those old cartoon and Mactone chippies that I love so much and sometimes play on this channel use absolutely ridiculous vibrato. But has its place. I love it. But I tend not to use it. 4A4 is usually about as intense as I'll get. But again, for each tune, all the different things that feed into how you decide what you're going to use for that kind of thing. I mean, firstly, this I'm assuming that you would stick to one. You might not want to. Sometimes you want to vary that throughout. Sometimes you want to vary it through the course of a note, and that's pretty common. I tend not to, if there's a lot going on the chippy anyway, and I can't be arsed, then I won't. But it's a good one for doing something interesting with a note that's otherwise quite dull. Just increase the value over time. Hey, joy of tracking. Things like the pattern speed as well as the BPM will feed into how that sounds in practice, because most of these parameters mean how many times per tick and how many ticks are being calculated per row, and that's what the speed dictates in relation to the system clock. And one of the two ways of keeping the timing in sync with a tracker, or with a tracker like Protracker, and you've got a choice between CIA and V-blank. V-blank means that the timing is linked to the gap, the weight. So the time it takes for the electron gun of the CRT to get from the bottom right back up to the top left to draw the next frame. So that that is a good timer for all sorts of things. I say good. It's all right. It's not great. And it also varies, you'll not be surprised to hear, from region to region. So PAL or NTSC, that's a different timing because different number of lines. So better to use something like the CIA, which is the chip complex interface adapter, I think. C64 had one, the Amiga has one as well. It's the one you'll have heard me banging on about if you've been following Open Amiga Sampler, because it's the one that's at risk of being fried if you short out pins on a parallel port. And they're quite expensive to replace, so don't do that. But they can keep time pretty well. So V-blank's a really old-fashioned way of keeping time. So if the tracker does have a CIA option, use that. Tangent. This is a new pattern, which I'm going to empty by going into edit mode and then doing a Control K. Control K kills everything from the current position to the end of the row. Very handy. Saves you blocking out and then cutting or anything like that. It just zaps the rest of the channel. So that's an empty. Extend it another position. And we'll have pattern 8. So, yeah. Right, so I think pattern 6 is going to have to be the last one, because it does loop quite well. Both patterns 5 and 6 follow the same I'm going to save this before I go any further, because I always forget to do that. Save module. So I'm going to do an Alt F4, which, because this is not Windows, does not close the program. It copies the entire pattern. Now I'm going to switch to the place I want to put it, which is pattern 8. Do you know what? Just to make it easier for me to remember, I'm going to make that 7 and that 8. 5, 7, 8, 6. Yeah, could be worse. We did an Alt 4, so now we can do an Alt 5 to paste the entire pattern again. And I think I'll just vary the melody on this one. My one concern about this whole piece is that it leans quite heavily on that whole pulsing up thing, which I like, but it's a lot, and I think at times the way it pulses starts to throw the rhythm off a bit. too loud. Maybe that's the problem. It's really, really easy to forget. Like, you forget with a chiptune more easily than you would in a more complex or kind of sample heavy tune. How important mixing is, because you think, oh, it's all just fucking square waves, just make them all as loud as possible. The drums are clipping anyway, might as well make them as loud as possible, make everything as loud as everything else. And like, it's a real trap, because especially if it's a really high energy chip tune, and if you're writing it for live performance as well. A lot of mine were written for live gigs in the mid 2000s. And when I was younger, I was probably writing them as if one day people will want to hear them live, which seemed like an impossibility at the time. And then suddenly it got popular, and milked that for a few years. That was fun. But yeah, like that. Well, firstly, music doesn't have to be like that. Secondly, it's usually detrimental to the music if it is. So it can be kind of hard to bring something, to lower the volume of something if you're really attached to it and if you think it really has a good effect. To the extent that sometimes you forget to even try. And if you never try, then you never know. Maybe that's okay. I mean, the reason I plucked it out of the unfinished business bin was that I can vaguely remember composing it, and I like that the bass bounces a lot. And one of the reasons for the pulsing arps was to kind of make space for that. Like, if I had a bunch of frenetic arps fighting with that bass, that would be no fun for anybody. I mean, the bass and drums work together, I think, well. This almost dub backbeat of the arps. My only concern is that it gets a bit dull after a while. But I mean, it's like a 1:20 chip tune, and there's a limit to anybody's tolerance for the same chip tune. I mean, like, I have a very high tolerance for some of my favorite 30-second chip tunes. There's no doubt. But yeah, that's what you can always remind yourself. Hey, if you're worried it's gonna get too boring for somebody, that's fine. They're grown-ups. They can skip to the next one. So yeah, so I'm going to stop worrying about that now. In which case, maybe all this needs is a bit of those last two patterns copied and pasted, a bit of variety. And then that loop back to the loop point, and maybe it'll feel a bit more balanced as a tune. This is weird. Oh, I copied and pasted it, didn't I? So yeah, this is legit. So the other thing I should do is copy that again, make sure it's in the copy buffer, leapfrog, and paste it into pattern 8. Because that's, I'll return to that theme, because so that rises up at the end there to lead into that final pattern, which lives up here, the twiddly area with the much higher vibrato, because all the melodrama is at max here. So so this is the one where I can do something different, And if I no longer have to go up high, then I don't have to go up high here. Ooh. My DJ, hi. Could we have a camera angle nearer to the keys next stream? Yeah, I used to have that. I used to have 4 cameras or something. I had one on my face, which nobody needs to see, especially after a year of lockdown. I had one directly over the keys, and one and the capture and the DSLR. Oh, thank you. Very kind. So yeah, getting closer to the keys would be good. I've got an old iPhone that I might be able to mount and have as an extra source next time. See if I can do that next time. Because that's not ideal. So many key commands I need to learn. Well, yeah, I have to learn all of them. A lot of them you'll use them, and the ones you use most frequently will stick in your head. I'll share this link in the chat to my version of the Protracker help file, which I reckon is as up to date and complete as it's possible to get now, and it also incorporates stuff that 8-Bit Bubsy's added, like keyboard shortcuts for functions that just didn't exist before, but they're like such no-brainers that it's great to have them, like undo, which I can never quite remember because I got used to living without undo because it never had it. It's Control U, but I did it before and it did something weird, so maybe it's bugged. Control J, join paste block. That is handy. That's a really easy way of doing. It's also called merge paste in other trackers, or morphous paste, or there's different names for that. But it basically does that pattern delay thing for you. If you, it will fill in any blank space with the notes that you paste. So if you do a melody that uses every other row, and then you copy it all, and then you do Control J 3 rows down, so on an even instead of an odd row, if all your notes are on odd rows. I mean, they're not, because we're counting from 0. So yeah, let's say you paste into an odd row. Then merge paste will just do that very nicely. If it's more complicated than that, like when I get to the very end of this, I'm going to be copying my melodies and I'm going to be merge pasting them over the arpeggios, and then I'm going to have to go in surgically and do the volume command on each note, but it's still way quicker than doing that all by hand. So it's a nice option. A lot of other things in the help file that are handy. Some stuff that's just been sitting in the original docs for decades that, like, I never even knew. Some weird Easter eggs in there for sure. So yeah, I'll try and get key cam on the go. So purely by chance, there's something going on here. That's weird. I don't know what's going on. It sounds cool. It sounds like maybe I've got an arpeggio where there shouldn't be one. There should be one there. Well, that sounds like Kirby singing, which is a good look. I think it's just that one note with the tremolo on it, the vibrato. It sounds good, so I'm going to leave it there. By the way, do I have some kind of accelerator on my A500? No, I don't. I was talking about this a bit earlier, and if this goes up on VOD, then you can check that out. But I was saying that while those accelerators look pretty cool, I don't really have any desire to accelerate my 500s. I've got one accelerator for in any of my Amigas. That's an 030 Phase 5 030 in one of my Amiga 1200s, my main work machine, and has 8, 16, fucking, I don't know, lots of RAM. It doesn't matter. Like, as long as it's got 8, that's enough for me. I don't really play games on it. I do some other stuff, BBS stuff, maybe lots of sample stuff, directory opus, that kind of thing. But I don't really need an accelerator. It's nice to watch some demos that need it. But yes, I have, this is an A500 Plus, I should point out as well. So it has 1 meg on board, soldered in. Same as the A600, because it's almost the same machine, depending on which year it's from, because there's some weird A500 Pluses that are basically A500s, but just with a couple of ECS chips in. And then there are some 500s non-plus, but they do have some ECS chips in, because Commodore are a fucking shit show. So yeah, it's always worth checking exactly what's going on in your 500 or 500 plus. But yeah, this one has 1 meg in the trapdoor, and it's a pretty standard old school kind of expansion. Yeah, 600. My 600s have the same sort of thing, 1 meg in the trapdoor. Actually, one of the 600s has extra RAM, extra fast RAM in it, because I think I thought that was a good idea. Maybe I ordered a lot of shit while I was recovering from COVID a year ago that doesn't make a lot of sense now. Maybe that was one of them. I can't remember why I thought that my 600 needed more RAM in it. But hey, it's in there now, so whatever. No keypad. Yeah, I don't use a keypad much. And the full stop key, or the point key, the delete key on a keypad in Protracker kills the sample. And it's quite easy to do by mistake. So I just keep away from the keypad for the most part. You can use it either as a drum pad to just trigger samples, which is kind of less use than it sounds. I did that live once, but never again. And you can use it to quick select samples, but it's like there's only 10 keys, so you have to move up and down banks to select the one you want. I find it easier to just control arrows through them. Yeah. It's totally the wrong speed and not the kind of vibe I wanted. Don't really know what I hope to achieve here, but hey, worth a try. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, don't know if I'm feeling this. This will feel like filler. So there's a bunch of stuff that I would do that if I do, it will be very much out of keeping with the rest of the track. So doing sort of gentler, less frenetic melodies with some hard cuts and a bit of a more minimalist texture. Like, that's what I feel like doing at the minute, but I can't really do that here because this is trying to finish a 10-year-old tune, which was begun and 80% completed in a very particular style, quite a bouncy, heavily textured style, with these arp pulses and the melody going all over the place. So yeah, that's another thing. That's a bit like challenges of sticking to a brief, a challenge of sticking to the mindset you were in when you first started something. That's another good reason not to leave unfinished stuff unfinished for years. But I'm never going to take that bit of my own advice. I never take most of my own advice. Yeah. That's not, I'm not feeling that at all. I don't think I'm feeling this either. And that's another good bit of advice that I don't usually take. There's a point, you should learn to recognize the point at which you just have to fucking delete everything you just did and do something else. my head. Okay. Is it possible to quickly transpose the whole track pattern? Yes, it is. There are keyboard shortcuts for it. You can check that link for those, but also sometimes you want to see on the screen what you're about to do before you do anything. You've got note up, note down, octave up and octave down there, track and pattern transpose. Clicking this bit anywhere on here will change this between A and S. S means it only transposes the sample that you currently have selected, and A transposes all in that track or pattern. So that's really handy, but not intuitive. So another reason to study the manual. Or watch informative streams like this one. But yeah, it's really handy to be able to transpose only. We've talked a lot about making a pattern and making a track do double or triple duty as up and delay and drums, or bass and drums and delay. So yeah, if you don't want to repitch all of your drums, but you do want to transpose your bass, then that's the one. You do it on the bass sample. If you're using lots of different samples for your bass, the way I am in this tune, where I'm using like 5 different waveforms to get a pulse width mod bass style, it's probably better to transpose all and then to just run through and do all your drums again, if you have the drums and bass in the same channel. Failing that, you've got other options for making that easier for yourself. You could start a new temporary pattern and split that stuff out into 2 tracks and do your transposing and then paste them back. Lots of options there. But yes, the answer is you can. I think with the keyboard shortcuts, you can also transpose a block, so not the entire pattern, or not the entire length of the pattern or track. I'm going to have a look at the list of shortcuts, because I will never remember all of these. Yeah, okay. No, doesn't do block. It does sample/track or sample/pattern, all track and all pattern. So I don't think there's a shortcut for just doing one section of it. Yeah, it's a good start for easy modulation. It's always worth going back and checking if you need to fix any major or minor thirds that have become a problem that weren't before, or whatever. Depends on what you're transposing. A tune I did fairly recently, in fact I think it was the Bullet Train Station jingle remix. I kind of got where I wanted to in about a minute and 10, but I really wanted to spin it out just 20 seconds longer. So I used lots of very lazy transpose, 4 or 5 different stages of circle of seconds or whatever. Yep, that's all doable, and there are other shortcuts for doing things like selectively replacing all the sample numbers. That's often handy if you've made some kind of change to the way your samples are laid out. Polyphonize block. I have no idea what that does. Control W. I'm not going to try it. Control Y, backwards block. That's handy. I forgot about that. I say handy. It's not. It's not handy. There'll be some massively edge case where it's useful, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. Yeah, I mean my workflow, I'm sure, could be made more efficient and generally improved by learning these shortcuts. But if I haven't learned them in 30 years, I'm not going to start learning them now. Probably. this is all shit. Again, like, learn to delete something that's not working before wasting any more time on it. That was never going to work. So that's mark F6, F7, F8, and F9 are quick shortcuts to jump to rows 0, 16, 32, and 48. Very handy. So hit F5 to go to the top, Command B to start marking the block. F8 takes you to row 32, which means that's a quick way to select and copy the first half of the block, and then immediately Control P, because Control P is paste, not Control V. And now I've got the same block in both halves of the pattern. So what am I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So start varying these waveforms now. Might not be what I stick with. Typically, I'll go through all the notes in a pattern and in a particular melody. And if I've got a range of samples of usually square waves, different pulses that I'm using to get a pulse width mod effect, I'll go through and I'll assign a new note number to each new note. And then sometimes you'll find that one of the ones that got a really short pulse is a long sustained note. It's quite high pitched and you don't want it to be quite so squeaky, so you kind of start adjusting that. That's a good example. That's a bit too squeaky for me. I'd rather that was maybe number 4, and then we can make it up by running back up the cue a bit later on for the shorter notes where it's not going to be so harsh for as long. I think that's yeah, that's better. So I'm padding this out with a whole lot of vibrato and a couple of pitch drops right at the end of a note, which I like to do. But there's no reason. I might well overwrite some of those with delay. Sometimes sticking a delay, a bit of pattern delay in, can, as well as giving you your pattern delay, can have the effect of cutting short a note that you didn't necessarily want to ring out. So if I was going to cut that with a C0, I might as well use it for pattern delay. And if I can't use it for pattern delay for this pattern, then I could use it for pattern delay for a different pattern. Or just for some extra drums or something. Yeah, I think that's getting to where it needs to be. So there's a very tiny bit of pattern delay in there, and if I want more, I can farm it out to channel 2, which has all that empty space in it that's not full of ups. Save while I go, because I think this is almost there, except for a lot of polishing of just getting delays in and filling that blank space for all the other patterns as well. Yeah, not entirely happy yet with that. I think in terms of general structure, it balances out where I want it, how long I want it to go before the loop point, and the sections that are repeats of that kind of B part rise in modulation balance out the earlier bit well enough, I think. I'm glad I doubled those 2 patterns to 4. Maybe there should be some more variety in this channel. Maybe that's why I feel like it's going on and on. I feel like there's too much of the ARP. I could double time the ARP. That might just turn it all together more of a caricature chiptune than I intended it to be. So what I mean by that is so 17. So here's what I'm doing. Maybe interesting to point out. When you only have one column of effects commands, which is the case in most Soundtracker clones like this, you've got to choose, do you use an effect like arpeggio or do you use an effect like volume? And if you really want that arpeggio but you also want the volume, then you're going to need to use multiple waveforms, one of which is quieter than the other. Either a quieter waveform itself or its instrument, its sample volume is set lower. We don't really have instruments in Protracker, but we've got metadata attached to each sample. Data includes stuff like loop point, position, repeat position, the Boolean for whether the loop is on or off, the volume out of 64, but it's in hex, so 20 is half volume, 40 is max. Fine tune plus or minus 7. It's not that fine, but it's fine enough. Tuning is a whole different episode of Protracking with Syphus. I think I've done it before as well. I'm not going to bore you with that again. Yeah, so that means that the default volume of this sample is always 20. Now, you can use a command, a volume count, the C command, to bump that up to 30 or 40 or whatever you want. So it's kind of handy because if you think that you're going to want to make it louder occasionally but normally have it quieter, then you set the volume quieter and then you occasionally use a C command to bump it up. And if you just want it to be always your quieter version of another copy of that sample, then that's how you do it. And suddenly you freed up your, if you can live with whatever volume you set it at, then it becomes like a release stage or a quieter version of your ARP sample. Now this isn't the same waveform. As you can hear, it sounds like not only is a volume drop, but also there's a pulse width mod change. But it does have the effect of a volume drop. If I drop that further, you'll hear it more pronounced. Like that. Down to nothing. So we'll use that to have a go at making this double time. it wasn't. It was 7, not 17. That's 0 because that's the ARP command. Yeah. The fuck is going on here? No, it was 17. I put it in the wrong one. Long day. And you always want to kill that with a C command, because any note that continues playing when you're not giving it an arpeggio command will just play out as the note. C left, line 8. So if I want to pulse that faster, there might not even be space for that. You get the picture, I think, of what I'm doing here. But I think it's going to sound whack. I think I would probably have to kill it entirely for that to work. But then I could start to modulate this a bit. And that might be interesting enough to make it worth doing. Without sounding too ridiculous. Might need a snappier kick drum on this to kind of hold the rhythm together a bit better. This is a bit bitty, getting rid of all these commands, but also trying to remember what I need to put in. Yep, 3/7, that's right. Counting my semitones. miscounted my semitones. Where's that wrong? I think I'm just mishearing that as a major third instead of a minor third. Maybe this is it. Maybe I'm finally losing it. Christ. Yeah, I'm finally losing it. Oh well. Why didn't that play? It's got no note. It's got no sample. Changes things a bit, and I might adjust the bass as well. Let's get that pasted in the other patterns. Okay, we might be nearly done with this. Except for all that tidying up and the pattern delay. But maybe pruning some of these bass notes. Like every third or every fourth. So put edit step, Control 4 to 4 rows, put it into edit mode. Caps lock key is on, which means key repeat works, which means if I hold down delete, nothing will happen intentionally. But if it is actually in edit mode and not just pretending, boom. That gives everything room to breathe. And it sounds like it was deliberately done to be interesting, rather than just fucking trial and error. And I could cut some of these notes to make it even snappier. So there's no decay tail, which would really change the character of this section, which might make it enough of, might make it distinct enough from the first section to be worthwhile. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So zeros. Didn't mean to do that. No, I did not mean to do that. But hey, I think it doesn't matter. I did it in the wrong row. I'm pretty happy with that. I will copy that. Let everything else breathe a bit more. I mean, a really dense, chippy texture on all 4 channels is often very cool, but you have to lighten it sometimes. That was weird because most of these patterns are getting rogue notes at the top, so they need to be capped off with a C command to make sure that the previous pattern's nonsense hasn't passed over. So that will safe now. And since we've got it, we might as well use that noise sample. So the loop command is now wonky because it's going to the wrong pattern because I've increased the number of patterns in the thing. I think that's what's going on there. So let's get back. So right at the end here. Did I copy over this? Is that what's happening? Or did I reorder them? Anyway, I think it's B. And I can use it here because there's nothing happening here. I think this should take it back to... No, it should be B3. Yeah, I must have pasted over that. Almost there. I wasn't sure I'd get this finished tonight. Or at all. Because, hey, it's been in the unfinished bin for 10 years. 10 fucking years. Let me see when it was last modified. I mean, this is last modified. I don't even know when it was created. Because the creation date's been wiped out by multiple back and forths between Amiga, macOS, and Windows 10, and fucking Windows XP probably. Last modified 14th of June 2010. So yeah, let's see if I can get this, all these bits of delay done quickly. I feel those drums are a bit weak. It's possible that all I need to do is tighten them up a bit by transposing them up. Sometimes that works. It's equally possible that I have to turn down every other sample in the whole track to balance it. Because they're kind of maxed out on volume. Shit, no, don't want to do that. Yeah, transposing the drums up, pitching them up a tiny bit helps a bit. Of course, you always lose a bit of decay time. That's what makes them a bit snappier, but you're not really gaining any volume. Sometimes just if the predominant kind of key feel of the piece is one that the drums at the pitch they're at can't really kind of cut through, then sometimes repitching them slightly is a big help. Whereas on modern DAWs, you'd think, okay, well now it's time to start carving out some EQ space for these drums using compression, that kind of thing. We've got none of that here. Well, we've got manual compression, which I've shown in the past on here. We'll do that again sometime, but not for a chiptune, and not for this chiptune. I don't think there's space for it. The reason I say bollocks is that I transposed the wrong channel, which is okay in this drum pattern because everything's on C3. But if you do it on a channel where the higher notes are right near the top or the lower notes are right near the bottom, then you might lose those if you transpose them out of range and then go back again. Protracker can store those notes even though they're unplayable, and I think it's an option setting to tell it whether or not to just delete unplayable notes if you transpose out of range. I'm not going to investigate now because I'd rather get this finished. There's that thing happening again. I hope it's not the keyboard membrane, because this is a new keyboard membrane. Shit, did not mean to do octave up. But it didn't work anyway, so that's fine. Cool, I think I've got them all. The other thing I could do, I said I wasn't going to do compression, but like I could make sure that every kick hits through. By basically dropping the volume of the bass every time a drum, a kick or a snare hits. It's a bit weird if you're not going to be consistent with it through the whole piece, so I don't think I'll do that. But that's a very crude but pretty cool way of doing artificial, artisanal by hand compression. Just ducking out that bass. Otherwise, that's really fighting with the drums. So maybe the answer is to reduce the volume of every other sample. It's a pain, but it might be the thing to do. What's that? 11. It's pretty fat waveform. Doesn't need to be that fat, really. How far does it go? these drums. Let's bring them all up again. No, bass. Right, it's this one I said. So I've taken the tail of the end of track 3 from the previous pattern and put it at the start of track 2 with a volume drop at the start of this pattern, which, though it may not sound it now, will make that start to feel right. As I said before, anytime you've got a C00, that's an opportunity to fill that with a delay note from somewhere else. And just make it a 1. No real alternative to doing this by hand, but hey, that's what you sign up for when you stop protracking. So for this, I want a that's weird, because that is even quieter again. Small slots there for delay. It's going to be an F. Quiet. So listen to each one if you're pretty sure that you're getting it right. I'm trying to scale as I go. So if I see a C20 in the original channel, it's not necessarily pattern delay. And even if it is, hey, I get an extra tap, multi-tap delay. So I'll scale that down to C08 in this delay. If I see a C10 over here, I'll scale it down to C04 or C02. And if I see a C30 over here, I'll scale it down in here to a C0A. Just like C10 or C60. Get a few more in here. Close enough, can't be bothered. Right, so that should do it all again for the other ones, although I think that's just a repeat of the same pattern. Yeah, it is. So it's 1, 2, 1, 2. So they're all taken care of, essentially. And it's a case of squishing them in here. And saving. Oh. So you always got to think back in time and Sometimes you got a bit of leeway. You can be creative about how basically you can shift your delay time on the fly, and sometimes you need to, because the alternative might be that you've got a bunch of identical square waves stacked up on multiple channels, which can just give it a sudden peak that it can work really well on Game Boy, for example, if you're doing tricks with panning and stuff. But sometimes it works on Amiga, but in a chip tune I tend to want to avoid it because it can just give it a little spike, and that might throw off any mastering you're doing if you're converting it to MP3, or any just pleasant listening. It might not be good. So it seemed like just a bunch of semi-random notes thrown at the other channel, but it has a huge effect in making you feel like there's a full-on DuckTales style moon level reverb going on, but you really notice it when it's not there. Which means I just have to suck it up and get it done. It's another pattern done, free to go. These patterns are all different, so I can't even copy and paste them. Yeah. No, that's basically identical. First 3/4 of it anyway. Let's copy it up to row 47. Save us a bit of work. Yeah, not bad. 2 more of those, and then I think it's pretty much done. I don't think I'm going to change the drums. Unless I listen in the morning and decide that I need to. Because listening in the morning is usually... Morning after listening test for anything is Right, what's the end of here? Ooh, that is missing the vibrato command. So if I just repeat those two rows, if I just repeat those two straight there, that's only it's only 2 rows delay, and that won't feel good. So what I'm doing is I'm putting in the very tail end of the previous sustained note, which is A sharp 2, and then the next one, which is G sharp, and then it's back to the ARP. So even if it doesn't make sense on paper or on the screen, it makes sense in the brain. And this one, similar, I'll tail it out with that. And here. C1, and this one's going to be the sustained D sharp as well. 5. Nothing else going on, so we'll stick a vibrato in there. Vibrato is a good way of avoiding dead-on phase stacking of identical square waves as well, because there's a pretty good chance that identical square waves in 2 different channels with at different points in their vibrato cycle are going to be out of phase. So the gains won't multiply, the amplitude won't multiply in the same way. It's a weird one. It's a 5-minute 6. Yeah. I'm going to ignore that that's got a pattern delay in it, and I'm just going to take it down here. Yeah, I can use a G sharp here. No, I can't. That's A. God, just put my head away. So, if it's not clear yet, when I'm typing in here, I'm looking over 1 channel and up 3 steps, and I'm trying to keep those roughly in sync, unless there's something else going on in here that shouldn't be interrupted, like an arpeggio. So anytime there's space here, I'm looking over and backwards in time, which is up the screen, to see what I can squish in. In this case, it's just the sustained F, and a bit of vibrato. stuff, really fiddly, so I'm doing save after each one because I cannot be asked to do these again. Remember to save, kids, save. It's the last one. So, what's going on down here? It's a D sharp 3 on... the hell instrument is that? Instrument 0. There isn't an instrument 0. The fuck? What's it supposed to be? No, it's on a pitch slide, so it's instrument 3. That's a 3 command. I wasn't paying attention. So it's actually, yeah, it's a D sharp. Awesome. CC11. Right, let's listen to the whole thing and see if I think it's finished, in which case I will do any of the tweaks that you've done, put some messages in the sample data, give it an actual name, all that kind of stuff, and then it's ready to go into whatever it's going to go to, which I think might be the Rebels chip disk. I will speak to Andy about that, see if he minds that I used it on this stream. Good to ask. Right, let's hear it. So, I think that's a bit jarring when it changes into that section. So maybe the first two of those patterns need to have the original bass that I've now deleted. Or just make it even more weird. This isn't helping. Nope, too weird. Repair that. How's the camera going? Almost time to wind this up now. I think it's basically done, and if it is, it might be the first time I've actually finished something on this stream. I'll have to listen to that in the morning and see if it still feels alright. I might hear it again after a break and asleep and think, oh shit, that transition's absolutely fine, nothing wrong there. Yeah, okay, I'm going to call that done, pending being given a title and generally being tidied up and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, cool, achieved something on here. Didn't quite stick to my promise of it being all chip and not much talk, but hey, there's always new people. People ask good questions. Sometimes I like to go over things again that maybe I've described or explained pretty badly in the past. Whatever. It's all good. Thank you for sticking with me. Jesus, 3¼ hours. Sorry about that. Thank you for your questions, and hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, give me a shout if on Twitter, that's usually best, if anything needs cleared up, or if you need that link again or any other links to stuff that I've mentioned, or if you want to get started with Protracker in an emulator or on real hardware, or if you've got any questions about the hardware that's going on over here. Thanks for your suggestions. I'll try and get a keyboard camera sorted out, which means I'll have to cut my fingernails. They're growing like mad because I'm taking loads of vitamins on lockdown to make sure I don't die. One of them apparently is whatever vitamin makes your fingernails grow really quickly, so I'll have to generally tidy myself up a bit for that kind of close scrutiny. Yeah, and as usual, I'll show you the Amiga shutdown routine, just to yank the disk out and kill the power. Brilliant. And it looks like this recording is going to be huge. I'll see if I can upload it. It might, I don't know how Twitch works. It might appear on Twitch as a video on demand. Maybe that's time limited. I don't understand. I don't understand Twitch at all. But hey, it works kind of. Thank you again, and good night.